Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to break down a really important law in India, the PoSH Act. Now I know, legal stuff can sound super complicated, but don't worry, we're going to use some simple everyday analogies to make it all click. Let's get into it.
So to really understand why this law is so crucial, you just have to look at this one number, 470,000. That's the number of reported crimes against women in India back in 2022. It's a huge, shocking figure, and it just goes to show how badly we need laws that protect people, especially in the places we spend so much of our time, our workplaces.
But a law like this doesn't just appear. Behind the legal text, there's always a story. And in this case, it was a powerful and tragic story that actually sparked a revolution in workplace safety laws across the country.
Okay, so this timeline, it really tells the whole story. It all starts back in 1992 with a social worker named Bhawari Devi. She was just doing her job, trying to prevent a child marriage, and for that, she was brutally attacked. But what happened next was almost as shocking. In 1995, the court let her attackers go free. This caused a massive public outcry. Activist groups stepped in, and their fight went all the way to the Supreme Court, which then created something called the Vishakha Guidelines in 1997. This was, believe it or not, the first time India had any formal rules about sexual harassment at work. But here's the catch, right? Guidelines aren't the same as actual laws. They were a fantastic first step, for sure, but they didn't have any real legal power. Companies could just ignore them. It quickly became obvious that what was really needed was a proper, binding act that every single organization would have to follow.
And that massive push for a stronger law is exactly what led us to the PoSH Act. So let's finally pull back the curtain and see what this law is all about.
Okay, I know, the full name is a total mouthful. The Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act. But honestly, the entire purpose of the law is hiding right there in its name. See those last three words? Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal? These aren't just fancy legal terms. They are the absolute heart of this law.
Think of these three words as the pillars holding the whole thing up. They're basically a three-step game plan for making any workplace a safer environment.
So here they are, laid out plain and simple. Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal. To make these ideas super clear, let's use a simple analogy for each one.
All right, first up is prevention. And the best way to think about this, it's like a fire drill. The point of a fire drill isn't to put out an actual fire, right? It's to practice and get everyone ready so that if a fire ever does happen, it doesn't turn into a total disaster. That's exactly what this pillar is about. It's about companies creating clear policies and doing regular training to stop harassment before it even has a chance to start. It's all about being proactive.
Okay, next we have prohibition. This one is simple. It's just like the no cheating rule in an exam. It's not a suggestion, it's not a please don't cheat, it's a hard and fast rule, a zero-tolerance policy. The PoSH Act does the exact same thing for sexual harassment. It's not just frowned upon, it is strictly forbidden. End of story. It sends a crystal clear message that this behavior is completely unacceptable.
And rounding it all out, we have redressal. Imagine a referee in a football match. A foul happens on the field. What does the referee do? They blow the whistle, they investigate what happened, listen to both sides, and then make a fair call to make things right. That's redressal. It's the system for creating a fair, formal, and quick process to look into a complaint and deliver a just outcome.
Okay, so we've got the three main ideas down. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this law actually play out in the real world? What are the rules of the game?
So this is a really important question. Who does the law actually protect? Well, if you remember the full name, it specifically mentions the sexual harassment of women. That means any woman who experiences harassment at work is protected under this act. For men facing harassment, they would need to turn to their own company's internal HR policies, because this particular law is written specifically for women.
And you might be wondering, where does this law even apply? The answer is pretty much everywhere. We're not just talking about big, fancy corporate offices. It applies to government jobs, NGOs, hospitals, schools, even the informal sector. So a domestic worker, someone at a salon, a woman working on a construction site, they are all covered. Basically, if you can call it a workplace, the PoSH Act applies there.
Okay, so let's say a complaint needs to be filed. Where does it go? The law actually has two different paths depending on the size of the company. If there are 10 or more employees, the company is required by law to have its own internal committee, or IC. But if it's a smaller place with fewer than 10 people, or if the complaint is against the boss themselves, then it goes to the local committee, the LC, which is set up by the government.
You know that saying, justice delayed is justice denied? Well, the PoSH Act takes that very seriously. From the moment a complaint is officially filed, the committee has a strict deadline. They have a maximum of 90 days to finish their entire investigation and give their final report. This makes sure that cases are handled quickly and don't just get forgotten.
So, we've talked a lot about the employee side of things. But what about the employers? The Act gives them a very clear playbook on what they absolutely have to do.
So, if you're a company with 10 or more people on the payroll, this is basically your non-negotiable to-do list. You have to create and share a formal PoSH policy. You must set up that internal committee, and, this is key, it has to include an external member to keep things impartial. You've got to run regular training for everyone, plus extra training for the committee members. And on top of all that, you have to file an annual report on the cases you've handled.
Okay, I know that was a ton of information, so let's just pause and do a super quick summary of the absolute key things you need to remember.
All right, let's boil it all down. First, the PoSH Act exists because of the fight for justice in the Bhawari Devi case. Second, it's all built on those three pillars: prevention, which is like a fire drill; prohibition, the no cheating rule; and redressal, the referee. Third, it covers every single workplace, big or small. Fourth, if a company has 10 or more employees, it must have an internal committee. And finally, every investigation has a strict 90-day deadline. Got it?
Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're an employee or an employer. Just understanding this law is the most important first step. This isn't just about ticking a box for compliance. It's about building a culture where everyone feels respected and safe at work.
And that's our look at the PoSH Act. If this helped clear things up for you, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe for more explainers like this, and definitely share it with your friends and classmates so they can be in the know too. Thanks so much for watching.